Most people think pest control starts with a bottle. Walk into a garden center, grab whatever promises to kill aphids on contact, spray it, and hope it holds. That's the habit the industry has been selling us for decades. But long before pesticides existed, gardeners weren't helpless. They planted their way out of pest problems. Growers across the Mediterranean, West Africa, South Asia, and the Andes worked out which plants insects couldn't stand, which ones lured pests away from food crops, and which ones quietly called in reinforcements. None of it needed a chemical label. Today, 7 plants that stop garden pests, not through guesswork, but through defense mechanisms generations of growers relied on, now confirmed in modern research. Almost every plant on this list earns its place twice, once in your garden, once in your kitchen. Number 5 is the one that actually stunned researchers. Lab tests found it outperforming a leading synthetic repellent by a wide margin. And number 6 is a plant most people yank out on sight, thinking it's a nuisance weed, when it's quietly running one of the most effective pest control systems in your yard. If this is your first time here, this is what we do. We look past the marketing and dig into growing methods that actually hold up over time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss next week's video. New one every week. Let's get into the list, ranked from solid to genuinely game-changing. Number 1. Garlic, Allium sativum. Garlic has been planted between vegetable rows for so long that no single culture can claim it as the originator. Farmers in China, gardeners in France, and growers across the Middle East have all leaned on it for the same reason. It's loaded with sulfur compounds that most insects want nothing to do with. The part people miss is that it isn't just the smell doing the work above ground. As garlic grows, it releases sulfur compounds into the surrounding soil, and those compounds interfere with how several soil-dwelling pests and fungal pathogens take hold near plant roots. Above the surface, the same volatile oils scramble the scent trail that aphids and Japanese beetles rely on to find their favorite hosts. Gardeners who border their beds with garlic consistently report lighter aphid pressure nearby roses and vegetables than on the same crops grown without it. That's not folklore, it's chemistry working from 2 directions, underground and in the air, at once. Practical use. Tuck garlic cloves around the base of roses, tomatoes, and brassicas in early spring. Let part of the crop mature into full bulbs for the kitchen, and pull a few young shoots to crush and scatter near plants under heavy pest pressure. Number 2. Mint, Mentha spp. You've probably grown mint at some point, then regretted it the moment it took over the bed. But that same aggressive growth habit is tied to why it works so well as a deterrent once you keep it contained. Mint produces menthol and other strong-smelling oils that overwhelm the sensory systems of ants, cabbage moths, and flea beetles. Ants matter more here than people assume because ants actively farm aphid colonies, protecting them from predators in exchange for the sugary honeydew aphids produce. Push the ants out, and aphid colonies lose their bodyguards fast. Practical use. Grow mint in buried containers, never directly in open soil, and set those containers near garden entry points or beside plants that struggle with ants and aphids. Harvest it often. Frequent cutting keeps the oils concentrated and the roots from breaking out of the pot. Number 3. Chrysanthemums. Chrysanthemums aren't just a fall garden staple. Their roots and flowers contain pyrethrins, compounds so effective against insects that they became the foundation for one of the most widely used botanical insecticides in the world, still manufactured from this plant today. What's easy to overlook is that a living chrysanthemum isn't a one-time treatment sitting at the edge of a bed. It's constantly shedding trace amounts of these compounds into the soil and surrounding air. Roaches, ants, fleas, and beetles are all sensitive to pyrethrins, which means a dense planting works more like an ongoing low-level barrier than a single spray ever could. Practical use. Plant chrysanthemums along garden borders and high traffic walkways where pests typically enter. For a stronger short-term treatment, dried and crushed flower heads can be steeped in water to make a homemade spray for isolated outbreaks. Number 5. Calendula, Calendula officinalis. Calendula gets written off as a pretty filler flower, but experienced companion planters use it on purpose as a trap crop. Once you see the logic, you won't leave it out of a vegetable bed again.
Aphids and several caterpillar species are strongly drawn to Calendula, often favoring it over the vegetables planted nearby. Set at the edge of a bed, it pulls pests away from your food crops and concentrates them somewhere you can actually see and manage. It also draws in hoverflies and ladybugs, both of which feed on aphids in large numbers once they arrive. Practical use: plant calendula in a loose ring around vulnerable vegetables like beans, squash, and peppers. Check it weekly. When aphid numbers build up on the flowers, remove the worst affected stems and let the plant regrow. Quick pause before we get into the back half of this list. If you're finding this useful, drop a like. It genuinely helps this video reach more gardeners dealing with the exact same pests. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time, because the next two plants are the ones that actually surprised the researchers who studied them. Okay, back to it. Number 5, catnip, Nepeta cataria. This is the one that surprised the researchers themselves. Beyond its effect on cats, catnip contains a compound called nepetalactane, and when Iowa State University entomologists tested it head-to-head against DEET, the active ingredient in most commercial bug sprays, nepetalactane repelled mosquitoes at roughly 10 times the potency in lab conditions. That's not a marginal edge. Insects rely heavily on scent to track down host plants and mates, and nepetalactane appears to disrupt that tracking directly, making it far harder for pests to locate the crops growing near it. Farmers in parts of Eastern Europe have interplanted catnip with vegetables for this exact reason for well over a century, long before anyone could explain the chemistry behind why it worked. Practical use: plant catnip in containers near patios, entry points, and vulnerable crops like eggplant and squash, since it spreads aggressively if left unchecked in open beds. Crush a few leaves occasionally to release more of the compound into the air around them. Number 6, common yarrow, Achillea millefolium. Here's a confession most gardeners share. Yarrow shows up uninvited, usually along a fence line or in a corner nobody tends to, and the first instinct is to pull it. That instinct is quietly costing you one of the best pest managers available to you for free. Yarrow doesn't repel pests directly. It works the way stinging nettle does, as a banker plant. It hosts small, low-level aphid colonies that pose no real threat to your main crops. And those colonies attract ladybugs, lacewings, and parasitic wasps early in the season, well before your vegetables are even mature enough to need protecting. Practical use: let a contained patch of yarrow grow near your vegetable beds, ideally somewhere it gets consistent sun. Leave the flower heads intact through summer to keep drawing beneficial insects in, and trim it back only if it starts crowding your food crops.
Number 7, sage. We're ending here on purpose. Sage is probably already growing somewhere in your yard, and there's a decent chance you've never used it for anything beyond seasoning a roast. Sage produces thujone and camphor, strong-smelling compounds that cabbage moths, carrot flies, and bean beetles consistently steer clear of. Unlike an annual you replant every spring, sage is a perennial in most climates, which means its root system and its pest deterrent presence gets stronger with every year it's left in place. The compounds release continuously and passively all season in every direction without you doing anything beyond letting the plant grow. That's really the theme running through this entire list. The plants that work the hardest tend to be the ones asking for the least. Practical use: plant sage near cabbage, carrots, and bean rows and leave it there year after year. Prune it back by about a third each spring to keep new growth vigorous and its oils at full strength. 7 plants, and every one of them has been grown, saved, and replanted deliberately for generations, long before there was a product for this. The research we cited today didn't invent these strategies. It confirmed what growers already knew from watching their gardens closely season after season, long before anyone had a lab to prove it. If you're walking away with a plant you're going to try or a strategy you hadn't thought about before, subscribe, hit the bell, and come back next week. New videos every week, same as always. One question before you go. Are you Team Garlic, keeping it classic and reliable? Team Yarrow, letting nature do the heavy lifting? Or Team Sage, building something that gets stronger every single year? Drop it in the comments. I read every one.